Ladies and gentlemen, if you'd like to find your seats, we'll begin in just a moment. Thank you for attending. This is the Delivering Capabilities Theater. On behalf of NetApp, the sponsor for the Delivering Capabilities Theater, it's my privilege this afternoon to introduce our distinguished speakers. I'm Don Zimmerman, the account manager for NetApp to Fourth Estate agencies. By the way, this session is approved for continuing education, so if you would like those continuing education credits, please see Marie with her scanner at the end of the theater afterwards. Mr. Carl Kurtz is the Chief Engineer of DISA's Enterprise Services Development Directorate branch and the Unified Capabilities portfolio. He's responsible for the development, testing, fielding, and sustainment of enterprise services for the DoD. As the DISA UC portfolio Chief Engineer, Mr. Kurtz synchronizes UC programs with DISA and DoD priorities and develops enterprise architecture that supports these services. A graduate of the U.S. Military Academy at West Point, Mr. Kurtz served for 20 years in the U.S. Army prior to beginning his civil service career with DISA. He served as the program manager for DCO, Defense Connect Online, and Defense Collaboration Services, DCS, before assuming his current role. Also joining him is Mr. Kevin Tate, who is the Department of Defense Chief Information Officer, functional lead for the delivery of end-user capabilities through enterprise services. The Enterprise Collaboration and Productivity Services, ECAPS, is the DoD's major initiative for realizing this capability. He's responsible for the planning and management of ECAPS efforts, which include DEOS, the Defense Enterprise Office Solution, CAPSET 1, Business and Voice Video, CAPSET 2, and Assured Voice, CAPSET number 3. Please join me in welcoming Mr. Kurtz and Mr. Tate.
Hey, good afternoon. I'm Kevin Tate, as I said, Mr. Kurtz. Hey, can I get an idea here in the audience exactly who's here? Military, civilian, government, I guess would be the right question, not civilian. Looks like most of you are civilian. Contractors and media. Okay. Okay, this is a little bit of a challenge for us as we've got an active acquisition effort on way. I don't want to get in trouble by my boss and find myself somewhere else here in the very near future. So as we talk about this, we got to be very careful, very sensitive to the Defense Enterprise Office Solution line of effort. As there'll be a little piece here at the tail end that we'll talk to, but I'd rather not address any questions related to that or another acquisition related to the cloud initiative, which is JEDI. I just need to be very sensitive to that. Okay. Hey, any discussion that's going to start with ECAPS really needs to start with the DoD Enterprise Cloud Strategy that was signed out by Secretary Shanahan in December of this past year. That strategy, which is well received, really solidifies a commitment for the department to cloud efforts, as well as the adoption of an enterprise type environment as we move forward to deliver these capabilities. I've been in the military for quite a while, or associated with the Department of Defense, but for about the last 30 years, I've heard of this information superiority, information dominance theme. Probably when I came to TRADOC headquarters, training doctrine command in the Army. And a lot of it didn't really resonate. It seemed to be able to be managed. We had the capability, we were able to maintain our dominance. It really was pretty clear. But the more and more time has gone on, especially over the last couple years, the amount of information and raw data that is out there and the power of that is really incredible. I don't know how commanders can make decisions as quickly in time-sensitive situations in the way that we have done it in the past. And what we need to do is figure out a way to harness that power, harness that information, aggregate it, enable us to do the analysis so the commanders in the field have the ability to make quick, smart decisions to influence the mission. It really is what we're supposed to be doing, is we're aligning our technology, our delivery of technology, to help the warfighter become more lethal, resilient, innovative, and a joint force. Now, you'll see over here on the, and the way that we're looking to do that within the department is, from a cloud perspective, is a multi-vendor, multi-cloud environment. I know lots of folks have heard of JEDI and this general purpose Pathfinder initiative, but it's much more than that. There's many other aspects to the delivery of our cloud strategy. DEOS happens to be one of them, the Defense Enterprise Office Solution. Now, let me talk to the challenges that we've had in the past. All right. In the past, we have been operating as a hardware-intensive organization. We've operated in data silos, which has, Carl, can you go back? Yeah, sorry.
Back?
Yeah, we've operated in these environments that have created, right there, Carl, that have created a challenge at the tactical edge where the information is critical. We've built this out, the infrastructure out in a way that is heavily intensive with hardware.
Random slide changes.
Right.
They're included free of charge.
So you have an infrastructure that's built out. It's heavily hardware intensive. It's as time goes on, it's very difficult and labor intensive to update and upgrade that equipment. It was built for a certain level of a mission. In many cases, it lacks the ability to surge, or the elasticity, if you will, to be able to surge and to retract. We are stuck with whatever it is that we have out there for the immediate future. If you move to the center of the chart there, where we're heading is an enterprise cloud. As I mentioned, there was two cloud types outlined within our strategy. The general purpose cloud, which is more of an infrastructure and a platform as a service type environment, and a fit for purpose cloud, which is really aligned more to a software as a service, if you will, subscription-based type of capability. In the big cloud there, you'll see that there's JEDI. The initial thread here would be that is a Pathfinder effort as you move forward. Another will draw from those lessons, and other acquisitions may come along downstream. In the fit for purpose cloud stream there, you see there is within the The orange, that is the DEOS cloud effort. It is intended to be a software as a service or a subscription-based service that is resident both on the NIPRNet and the SIPRNet, and CONUS-based, OCONUS-based, and to support the tactical user, the disconnected user. Next chart. And again, I'm going to focus only on the software as a service to try to get an idea of why we have moved forward in this mindset. First of all, we have a terrible challenge with collaboration, seamless collaboration, horizontally and vertically amongst the organizations within the department. It really does impact mission. The second thing that I think is key here is the ability to do rapid security updates. This environment will enable us to do the adequate quick updates to software patches to enable a more secure environment. And then the last thing I'm going to touch on there is we get greater visibility into what we are spending, one, and two, I believe, into the resources that it takes to make this legacy capability work. We have a lot of administrative folks out there running servers. I mean, it's just layered. It's very hard to get your hands around how much you are actually spending in those places. And the reality of it is those resources are probably better spent doing greater cybersecurity type missions. And will allow the others to do the more routine type updates and so forth through a service.
Okay. All right, so I'm going to talk about ECAPS, and Kevin touched on it a little bit, but what is ECAPS? Well, ECAPS really is a governance structure primarily, and the intent is to outsource the DoD's enterprise commercial cloud service solutions, software as a service, when it comes to certain types of capabilities, and I'll get into what those specifically are momentarily. But the intent is to take those services that make sense to outsource to a cloud service provider and go ahead and outsource those where we can. And yes, the random slide generator is alive and well. So why is it important? Well, having the DoD have dozens to hundreds of different data centers, I know hundreds to thousands of what we used to call server rooms, results in a lot of issues. When it comes to cost, every single server costs some amount of money. Well, if we can offload that into sort of in a more standardized, more centralized type of environment, such as the cloud, commercial cloud being even better, then we can leverage the economies of scale that come with that. We have a lot of problems, and Kevin touched on this a moment ago, about integration across the department, the ability to share information. Definitely impacted by everybody having their own different types of services, different access controls, different rules for being able to get to the service, different capabilities within each one of them. I can't tell you the number of different portal-based services that I've interacted with in 20 years in the Army, but I know it's in excess of at least 10. When it comes to security, having each individual command having their own boxes that they've got to maintain, that just greatly increases the surface, the attack surface that our opposition has to work with to try to compromise information. And so part of this is to centralize and to more standardize how it is that we defend our information and how we manipulate our information. And finally, and something that most people don't think about is industry is moving away generally from an installed application with a license key that goes with it and licensing that for a certain number of dollars. And instead, going to more of a subscription model where you pay for access to a particular capability based on a set rate, also based on the level of service that you require, whether it be some premium access or some basic access to less complete services. And so we're trying to keep up with industry as industry moves toward this type of a model. Next slide, or some slide. So we have a few strategic goals, and the first is, and goal number one can be synopsis of that, is that we're trying to move to a single suite of applications across the department so that we can more easily share information. This suite should be adaptable so that to the mission set that's trying to be accomplished. For the second goal is implementing a standard set of capabilities that allow ubiquitous access, meaning whether it be from a desktop computer, a mobile device, a tablet, phone, wherever you happen to be, being able to have access to your information, being able to present that information, to share that information, or just to be able to consume it. We don't want to be tied to a specific platform to be able to do that. And then the third goal, as far as providing dynamic information access, we want to have industry or department-wide standards for how it is that we access this data, how it is that we share our information, and make that information available anytime. And finally, we want to move to a environment where we can adopt change and we can react to change as quickly as commercial industry does today. We're moving toward a model where we're more willing to accept that where software and services change rather quickly over time, and instead of putting in months to years long analysis up front to say before we allow a fielding of a particular product, and then you know what the fielding schedule looks like, you end up years behind what the rest of the world is doing. This type of model leans us forward in saying we are willing to accept changes to the service by default, and then block access to those services by exception. There are a number of reasons for each one of these. We have a question and answer session after this. I'll be able to get into some additional detail on those. Next slide. So, what is it we mean when we talk about ECAPS? What capabilities are talking about? We refer to this for obvious reasons as the chiclet chart, but and everybody here has heard about DEOS, the Defense Enterprise Office Solutions acquisition that's currently out for bid right now. What you see outlined in yellow, and I'm colorblind, so I'm not going to try to get into too many of these colors, but the yellow section on the left, referring to that as ECAPS Capability Set 1. That's where we're talking about desktop productivity suite, messaging, email type applications, some content management capabilities, and some real-time collaboration capabilities. That scope is all wrapped up in the current DEOS acquisition. What we're looking at right now, and we have a lot of decisions to make, and we'll eventually spin out different programs that will follow up with future acquisitions, are what we refer to as capability sets 2 and 3. Capability set 2 is the unclassified video and unclassified voice, think VTC and telephony, for essentially business class users, as in non-C2. And this would be generally your unclassified phone systems and unclassified VTC. And then capability set 3 is the assured, as in using assured type technologies that allow precedence and preemption. That will be capability set 2, capability set 3, where we'll spin out an acquisition of that assured voice and video. Though we have some movement in that area where we may neck that down to assured voice. With the intent being that each of these capability sets is separate and distinct, meaning DEOS is an acquisition. It's got a program manager. That program manager is responsible for the cost, schedule, and performance of that program. Separately from that, although there will be some interoperability on the back end, will be this other acquisition of some kind for this capability set 2 for voice and video, and again for capability set 3. In the intent here is when we looked across, we did market research, we found that this is essentially where the logical breakdown across the commercial industry fell out, where what we have defined as DEOS, we have a lot of software as a service companies that operate in that space. The capability sets 2 and 3, capability set 2 for the business class voice and video, the commercial marketplace, there's a pretty well-defined set of service providers that operate in that space, and on the short services, that really is a much smaller segment of the voice and video marketplace. All of this supported by a set of common services, and you can see the chiclets that we have down there at the bottom, but we still are not giving up any room on cybersecurity. We have a lot of impacts on the transport layer in order to be able to reach out to a commercial service provider. Hosting, obviously, is we move into this space, we'll be looking at a service provider from OffNet for those services that we can pull from a CSP. And in the end, we're also leveraging shared NetOps for any of the capabilities that we purchase across any of these capability sets. And at this point, I believe I will be, on the next slide, I believe I'll be turning it back to Kevin. You have the clicker? There we go. To talk about DEOS.
This is probably just as easy. And you probably can hear me better. I apologize. All right, I'm not going to deep dive into this. The DEOS acquisition, as we said, is out on the street. The intent here is for us to deliver a single enterprise solution to address the challenges that we have as a department with interoperability, sharing of information, accessing information, as I said, vertically and horizontally across the entire operating space. If we go to the next slide. I'll touch on the upper part here. I know a lot of folks had anticipated a solicitation going out last summer through DISA. That had changed. New leadership came on board. The President's management agenda had just completed. There was a desire to take a look at whether there was a different way to move forward from a contracting perspective that maybe was more aligned to the President's IT management agenda. And as we were advancing through our analysis, we determined that it would be feasible. It would support and better shape the entire federal government space as we move forward. If we aligned ourselves more with the GSA efforts, they had contracting vehicles that were there that we could adopt in large part and try to keep us on path to deliver the capability. It gave us, it really was driving towards a category management towards the federal government space, greater visibility into cost across the board. Within the department, we thought it would be better because it would allow the DEOS PMO to focus on the technical aspects of delivering the capability, working with the components to help support migration, and not worry about the business side necessarily, the contracting side elements there. We've stood up several working groups within the entire ECAPS larger working group governance body, if you will, that would drive testing, help shape what that testing would look like, help drive and shape some of what our critical integration points are as we move forward, where we think we might have some challenges or gaps today if we were moving into a cloud environment. So we've done a lot of work up front to position ourselves to be successful following award. And nothing is easy when you're talking about doing something in an enterprise environment or a joint environment. That is very, very challenging to make sure that you're drawing the right folks in, capitalizing on the synergy that could come with it. And I think we've made a lot of inroads probably over the last 6 to 7 months at least. Maybe it's a little bit more now. Time keeps marching on. But I think there's good inroads here to drive the department to an enterprise environment. More and more folks are coming online as willingness to accept that this is the way forward. The last thing that I'll talk to is we already said the RFQ is out on the street. We're hoping on hope to begin integration and some operational testing in the fall, and then into the early part of the calendar year of 2020 to begin some initial migration efforts of some users. I think that's the last chart. Next chart. Oh. Go ahead.
So everybody does a presentation has to have an eye chart, and this one's ours. So the migration prep checklist is primarily oriented on the government folks that are attending today. Rather than give you guys a bunch of eye strain, we do actually have copies of this up here to my right, your left, and that after we're done with the Q&A, invite anybody that's interested to come up and grab a copy. There are plenty to go around, so please don't push each other on your way up here. And with that, I think go ahead and open the floor to Q&A. All I ask is that we make use of the microphone in the center aisle here, and Kevin and I will attempt to address any questions that you may have.
Okay, we thank you.
It looks like we have one.
I know, I was kidding.
That close.
So I got a question about the tactical users are at the edge. So how are you going to provide the service to them when they're, say, out in Korea or in the Philippines or out in Bahrain or something like that?
Are you specifically talking to DEOS?
Yes.
Okay, do you want to address that? Or?
Yeah, I can do that. Certainly, we have a requirement. We've outlined a requirement to be able to operate in a disconnected, intermittent, low bandwidth environment and across the globe. So those are requirements within DEOS or even with the rest of the cloud strategy. As we were moving forward, we anticipated that there would be potential pilots to help further shape that and build on that requirement.
That's probably not a lot more that we can say to that beyond what's currently in the RFQ that's on the street right now. We'd need to probably refer to that for further detail in answer to your question, sir.
Can you be more specific on the summer of 2019 for the award?
So the RFQ went out at the end of April. I think it was 30 days that was supposed to be on the street, and then we start a source selection. So, you do your own math, but the intent is, yes, that during the summer months, we would have an award. Beyond that, I don't think I can be more specific without getting in trouble with my boss.
I think there's also some variables that are in there.
Yeah, there are a lot of variables in that. We don't know the number of respondents and how complex their respondents, those responses will be. So that will certainly drive the schedule. Honestly, I wish I could be more specific, but there's just too many unknowns right now. But our intent is to award this summer. Correction. Our intent is for the GSA to award this summer.
So, Chris Fenwick, Navy. You see capabilities as native audio or video. That goes through JRSS, correct?
Presumably, yes. Depending on the technology selected, they may or may not, because certain types of traffic on the DoD do cross JRSS, and certain types do not.
Okay, I have never had a straight answer for that. Number two, for capability two, off-net voice and video for all intents and purposes, right? Would not go through JRSS, but we're going to configure some sort of cybersecurity solution relative to a session border controller at the service level or agency level or what?
Okay, so I think that you made a couple of assumptions there that are probably a little bit hasty. I think that what you described is the as-is in the network, and the as-is as far as the architecture that current applications within each of these three different spaces actually work through. We are not at this time saying that that's going to be the architecture in the future. One of the points of using an RFQ is to solicit from industry what their recommendations would be based on the capabilities and limitations of their particular technologies. There are certain things within the DoD architecture that certainly promote what we'll call out of band real-time services, through separate VPNs to bypass certain security stacks. And there may be opportunities to be able to extend that to other real-time services that get introduced through either capability set 1, 2, or 3. Okay, so bottom line is we're not presupposing that the current architecture is going to be the future architecture for any of these capability sets. Other questions? Have to be honest, I expected more questions. All right. Well, thank you for attending. I think Kevin and I will be around here for anybody who wants to ask any one-on-one questions. Again, please feel free to grab one of these migration prep checklists, especially for the DoD mission partners.
Can you grab me my notes?
Yeah.
No one-on-one, just want to say hello.
Yep.
How are you? Oh, sorry.
Kevin
Becky.
Tate.
How are you?
Good to see you. Very good job.
Becky and I know each other from way back.
I think Kevin actually got it.
Okay. Yes, we did. Yep. Very much so.
Hey, good to see you.
Okay.
Hey.
All right. Thank you.